Why is the Flying Hour program so important to Air Force leadership?
So most of you have probably heard that the Air Force is struggling with pilot retention, and in short, we don't have as many pilots as we need. We would like to have more pilots, and there are two pieces to that puzzle. One is we retain more pilots, and there are a lot of initiatives that are going on that front. But the other piece of the puzzle is to sit there and absorb more pilots, create more pilots, and train more pilots at the front end of the pipeline. So one of the key pieces of that is to sit there and produce more sorties. Because to date, one of the limiting factors has been that we haven't been able to produce enough training sorties to retain the number of pilots that we would like to have to optimize readiness levels.
Recent guidance on the Flying Hour program philosophy has changed. Will you summarize this new guidance and why it has changed?
When we look back over time, decades ago for example, the gold-plated standard for tactical aircraft was to fly those aircraft about 18 times a month, or an 18U rate. Currently, we're flying F-22s at a rate of somewhere between 11 and 13 times per month. And so what we see is that the readiness levels have declined for a number of reasons over the decades. Air Force senior leaders have made an initiative to reinvest in weapon system sustainment, spare parts, and other things in order to reclaim some of those earlier higher ute rates. And so now what we need to do is start to stretch the muscle a little bit so that we can sit there and get closer to that 18 ute that we've done historically from the current ute rates that are down around 12.
How are we doing in the third wing with respect to our Flying Hour program?
So we've gotten off to a great start in FY18. What we hope to achieve in this year is 10,465 flying hours on the F-22 side. We have numbers associated as well with the E3 and the C-17, but I want to focus a little bit on the F-22 because those aircraft, we have very little margin between what we need for our readiness requirements and what we're capable of producing. Fortunately, on the E3 side and the C-17 side, we can produce more hours than we need. And so the hardest problem for us to go after is on the F-22 side. There, what we're trying to do is we're trying to set a new record by about 300 hours. So we want to grow from the previous record of 10,100 F-22 hours to the current plan of 10,465. It's about 3%. So it's a modest increase, and we want to do it in a sustainable way.
Some perceive this new guidance for the Flying Hour program as leadership saying that the quantity of hours flown matters more than the quality of training accomplished. What are your thoughts?
I'm also concerned about this. When I first came in the Air Force 24 years ago, there was a tendency to chase metrics, and it was more about generating the number of flying hours than the training associated with it. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I want to be careful that as we increase the number of flying hours by about 3%, we're also retaining the same quality of training that we're doing in those flying hours, because ultimately we want to increase readiness, not just chase numbers.